On a rural farm, we meet Oliver, his son Henry, and a young man named Tucker as they herd a flock of sheep back to the barn. Everything is going perfectly until Henry's older brother Angus watches from a distance, consumed by jealousy because he can never match Henry's talent for farm work. To make matters worse, Angus has a broken leg and is forced to stay inside the house all day without anything to do, so he decides to take out his frustration on his younger brother. Angus walks over to Dudley, Henry's beloved pet sheep, carrying a small axe in his hand. A few minutes later, Henry rides back to the farm on his motorcycle and starts looking for Dudley, but the sheep is nowhere to be found. He steps into the barn, only to be horrified when pieces of Dudley's body suddenly fall from the ceiling. Even worse, he discovers Angus wearing the poor animal's skin before charging at him in a terrifying attack. Henry is left completely traumatized by the horrifying scene. At that moment, one of the farm workers, Senora Mack, rushes in and interrupts the chaos. She delivers devastating news. Their father has been killed in a motorcycle accident before anyone could save him. 15 years later, Henry has long since left the farm behind and built a new life in the city. Now he has returned to visit his late father's property. However, because of the traumatic incident from his childhood, he has developed an extreme phobia of sheep and cannot even bring himself to get close to one. On his way back to the farm, two environmental activists, Experience and Grant, are also heading there. They suspect that a secret laboratory on the property is conducting cruel and illegal genetic experiments on animals, and they are determined to expose the truth. When Henry arrives at the old family house, he finds it completely deserted. While looking through old photographs of his father in the office, he suddenly has a shotgun pointed straight at his face. Fortunately, the person holding the weapon is Senora Mack. Realizing who he is, she immediately apologizes, explaining that she mistook him for a burglar, and warmly embraces him. After catching up and talking about the past, Henry goes to find his brother Angus, who had invited him back specifically to buy his share of the farm. When they finally meet, Henry hesitates because the farm is the only thing he has left to remember his father by. Angus promises to pay him immediately and takes him into his office to hand over the check. Meanwhile, the environmental activists have reached the farm and discovered the hidden laboratory. There they spot Dr. Strickhash and her team of assistants transporting a mysterious shipment. Once they are distracted, Grant sneaks over to inspect it and finds 3 sealed cylinders. However, Dr. Strick notices the intruder and orders her team to chase him. Grant manages to steal one of the cylinders before escaping into the forest with Experience. After putting some distance between themselves and their pursuers, they examine the cylinder and discover that it contains a genetically engineered creature whose DNA has been heavily modified. Realizing they now have solid evidence, they believe they can finally expose the farm's owners and shut the experiments down for good. But Dr. Strick and her assistants soon catch up with them in the woods. Grant runs ahead to distract the pursuers, but he trips over a tree branch, causing the cylinder to slip from his hands. When he gets back on his feet, he discovers that the glass has shattered and the creature inside has vanished. Seconds later, the creature appears behind him. To his horror, it turns out to be a zombie sheep. The mutated animal lunges at Grant and bites his ear. After a desperate struggle, he manages to throw the creature away, but the bite infects him. He quickly begins to feel weak and realizes that something is terribly wrong. At the same time, Henry signs the paperwork selling his share of the farm and asks Angus what he plans to do with it. Angus explains that he is investing in cutting-edge agricultural science, and claims that his new project will revolutionize the industry. With the sale finalized, Angus tells Henry it's time for him to leave. Before departing, Henry says goodbye to Senora Mack, who gives him his father's old trophy, the one he won after being named the region's best sheep shearer. She also tells Henry that his childhood friend Tucker is now the farm manager, and asks Tucker to show him around the property. Henry and Tucker are thrilled to see each other again. They climb into Tucker's pickup truck and head toward the field where the flock is grazing. Unbeknownst to them, the small mutated sheep has already reached the area and begins luring another lamb with its strange cries. The curious lamb approaches the mysterious creature crawling across the ground, but the zombie sheep suddenly bites it on the nose just as Tucker drives Henry toward the field, completely unaware that the deadly infection has begun spreading through the flock. Suddenly, Henry spots a small lamb standing in the middle of the road with a badly injured nose. Once again, his crippling fear of sheep keeps him from getting any closer, but Tucker reassures him that everything is fine and says he'll simply guide the lamb to the other side of the fence. As soon as the two men step out of the truck, Experience appears. Without them noticing, she grabs Tucker's rifle from inside the vehicle, points it at them, and orders them to walk with her into the forest while demanding to know where Grant is. Neither Henry nor Tucker has any idea who she's talking about, but Henry tells her that his brother, Angus, the owner of the farm, might be able to help her find him. The moment she realizes Henry is the farm owner's brother, she becomes furious and threatens them. However, the rifle's safety is still on, and she has no idea how to disengage it. Tucker calmly offers to show her how it works, but the instant he gets his hands on the rifle, he cleverly takes it back. Realizing she's been tricked, Experience storms off to continue searching for Grant. Meanwhile, Grant is wandering through another part of the forest, and the infection has already begun changing his behavior. Despite being a passionate animal rights and environmental activist, the disease strips away his self-control. When he comes across a small rabbit, he brutally eats it alive. At the same time, Henry and Tucker return to the pickup truck, only to be surprised when Experience comes back. This time, she apologizes for threatening them and explains that she broke into the farm to stop the horrifying experiments being carried out on the animals. Henry is confused and tries to ask what she means, but before he can, Tucker notices smoke rising from the house of Mike, one of the farm workers. The three of them rush over and find a pot of pasta burning on the stove, while the kitchen is in complete disarray, as if a violent struggle had taken place. Tucker searches for Mike, but instead discovers the same injured lamb they saw earlier. The creature suddenly attacks the group, forcing them to hide inside one of the rooms. There they find Mike lying on the floor with his neck almost completely eaten away. Moments later, the lamb smashes a hole through the door with its head, leaving Tucker no choice but to kill it with a shot from his rifle. After the terrifying encounter, the three decide to leave the house, only to discover a large number of infected sheep roaming outside. Fortunately, they don't attack immediately, but Henry's phobia still prevents him from walking past them. Experience helps him face his fear, telling him to focus only on the sound of her voice and block everything else out. The plan works, and they make it almost all the way back to the truck. Just then, a zombie sheep suddenly leaps into the vehicle and attacks Tucker. Henry and Experience climb into the bed of the pickup while Tucker floors the accelerator, desperately trying to shake the creature off. Henry grabs a chainsaw stored in the truck bed in an attempt to save his friend, but the rough terrain causes the truck to bounce violently, and the chainsaw flies out onto the road. Despite Tucker's desperate efforts, the zombie sheep manages to bite him on the leg. Even so, Tucker finally throws the creature off before climbing into the truck bed himself, while the driverless pickup continues speeding toward the edge of a cliff. The truck is seconds away from plunging over the edge, but Henry, Experience, Tucker, and Tucker's dog all jump out just in time. The pickup crashes into the lake below, leaving the group alive but still determined to return to the farm and uncover what's really happening. Nearby, Grant wanders aimlessly around the farm, completely losing his mind as the infection takes over. His body continues to mutate, his teeth begin changing, and thick white hair starts growing across his face like sheep's wool. As he stumbles along the road, he unexpectedly runs into Angus. Annoyed to find someone standing in the middle of the road, Angus gets out of his vehicle to investigate. Without warning, Grant instinctively bites Angus on the hand before running away. Meanwhile, Henry and the others continue making their way back to the farm, but Tucker begins feeling the effects of the bite on his leg. He removes his boot to inspect the wound and is horrified to discover that his foot has started transforming into a sheep's hoof. The group realizes they need to find an antidote immediately, or Tucker will become a horrifying human-sheep hybrid. The situation grows even worse when they spot another flock of infected sheep charging down the mountainside toward them at terrifying speed. Tucker orders his dog to run back home, then pushes through the pain in his injured leg as he flees alongside Henry and Experience. After a difficult escape, they finally reach the secret laboratory. Inside, they discover the body of a sheep hanging from the ceiling, and the horrifying experiments being conducted there leave them completely shaken. Suddenly, they come face to face with Angus and Dr. Strick. Henry desperately warns his brother that the sheep are spreading a deadly infection everywhere, but Angus refuses to believe him. He insists that he's simply developing genetically modified sheep and plans to present his breakthrough to investors at an upcoming exhibition, convinced it will make his project incredibly profitable. Henry tries one last time to convince him and asks Tucker to show Angus what the infection has done to his leg. Before he can, however, Dr. Strick injects Tucker with a powerful sedative, knocking him unconscious. Henry rushes to help, but Tucker urges him to escape the lab with Experience, insisting there's no other choice. The two flee the laboratory, only to be chased once again by the infected sheep until they become trapped beside the pit where the remains of the failed experiments were dumped. Moments later, Angus arrives. Henry begs his brother to help them, but Angus coldly refuses, declaring that he won't let anyone ruin his plans. As the infected sheep close in, Henry and Experience lose their footing and fall into the pit, landing among piles of mutilated animal remains. With no other option, they venture into a dark underground tunnel in search of another way out. Experience lights a candle to guide their way. At the end of the tunnel, they find a tiny opening barely large enough for one person to squeeze through. But Experience freezes. Just as Henry suffers from a fear of sheep, she suffers from severe claustrophobia and can't force herself through the narrow passage. Things become even more desperate when they hear the infected sheep jumping into the pit behind them. Henry calmly reminds Experience to focus only on the sound of his voice, just as she had once helped him overcome his own fear. Encouraged by his words, she gathers the courage to squeeze through the narrow opening. As the sheep close in, they try to bite Henry's leg. Experience reaches the other side first, and pulls him through to safety, while the infected sheep become trapped inside the passage. Henry quickly grabs the candle and sets the trapped creatures on fire, burning them all alive. Experience thanks Henry for saving her life. Together, they finally escape the tunnel and run toward the barn to wash themselves off. But just as they enter, they hear a strange sound coming from somewhere inside. When they go to investigate the strange noise, they're shocked to discover a massive hybrid creature that's half human and half sheep slowly approaching them. Experience immediately notices that the creature is wearing her partner's clothes, and she realizes it's Grant. The infection has transformed him into a horrifying hybrid monster. She desperately tries to remind him of who he is, but he completely ignores her and sends Henry flying with a single powerful blow. Experience helps Henry back to his feet, and the two of them rush out of the barn. Henry quickly slams the door shut behind them, trapping the zombie hybrid inside. Although they've escaped, Henry can't stop worrying that the same transformation could happen to his friend Tucker. Back inside the laboratory, his fears begin to come true. Tucker's transformation has already started, and his teeth are becoming more and more like a sheep's. Dr. Strick prepares a dose of the antidote to test on him, but before injecting it, she decides to observe how the infection develops. Within minutes, Tucker transforms into a human-sheep hybrid, just like Grant. Dr. Strick immediately administers the antidote, successfully reversing the mutation and restoring Tucker to normal. Thrilled by the success of her experiment, she collects a blood sample from Tucker so she can reproduce the same results. However, the moment she leaves the laboratory, she witnesses one of her assistants being torn apart by the zombie sheep. She tries to escape into the forest, but her legs become trapped in a patch of deep mud. As she struggles to free herself, she sees the hooves of a zombie sheep approaching. Without hesitation, the creature begins devouring her alive. Meanwhile, Angus returns to the farm to present his project to a group of investors. When he looks into a mirror, he notices that his face has become unusually pale, and that the bite wound on his hand is getting worse. Even so, he steps onto the stage and proudly presents the revolutionary results of his research. He then orders his assistants to open a hidden section of the stage, revealing Oldfield, a sheep that has been completely cloned inside the laboratory. The audience is amazed, but Oldfield suddenly lets out a loud, continuous series of bleats, almost as if warning everyone that something terrible is about to happen. Moments later, dozens of zombie sheep burst into the presentation, attacking everyone in sight. Panic erupts as chaos spreads throughout the venue. Unable to stop the massacre, Angus decides to flee. While escaping, he encounters another infected sheep, but instead of attacking him, the animal simply walks past. Confused, Angus looks down at his injured hand and discovers that it has transformed into a massive sheep's hoof. He realizes that the infected creatures no longer see him as an enemy, and that he's rapidly becoming one of them. A short time later, Henry and Experience arrive and witness the zombie sheep attack. Just then, Senora Mac pulls up in her vehicle, picks them up, and drives them back to the farmhouse. Along the way, they find the roads overrun by flesh-eating sheep. After nightfall, they reach the house and attempt to call for help using the kitchen phone, only to discover that all the phone lines are dead. Suddenly, Grant crashes into the house and knocks Henry to the floor. In desperation, Henry grabs Senora Mac's shotgun, but it's completely out of ammunition. The hybrid creature overpowers him, and Henry is moments away from being killed when Experience saves him by smashing Grant across the neck with a wooden stick, knocking him unconscious. Although they've survived the attack, the zombie sheep quickly surround the house, and it's only a matter of time before they break inside. Henry and Experience use furniture to barricade the doors while Senora Mac tells them there's another telephone in Angus's office. Henry rushes there, only to discover Angus and Oldfield hiding inside. Furious over everything his brother has caused, Henry realizes Angus has no intention of helping. He grabs his father's old shotgun and vows to destroy every one of the infected creatures, starting with Oldfield. But Angus steps in front of the cloned sheep and refuses to let Henry kill it, revealing that Oldfield was cloned using his own DNA. He then shows Henry the bite wound on his arm and admits that he'll soon become part of the zombie sheep herd himself. Hearing this, Henry points the shotgun at his brother and threatens to shoot him. But at the last second, he lowers the weapon and hands it back before returning to Senora Mac. At that moment, Experience calls for everyone to escape immediately. Before leaving, Henry takes his father's old trophy with him. When the three of them reach the front of the house, they discover that it's completely surrounded by infected sheep. In the middle of the chaos, Angus and Oldfield are making their way toward the farm's private airstrip. Henry realizes his brother is planning to escape by plane. If he succeeds, the infection could spread to countless other places, so Henry decides he has to stop him. As he glances at his arm, Henry discovers that he, too, was bitten during his fight with Grant. Realizing he's now a danger to Senora Mac and Experience, he leaves them in the vehicle and tells them to drive away. Moved by his courage, Experience tells him to come back safely as soon as he can. Henry now has to find a way through the infected sheep without drawing attention to himself. He spots a wool coat inside the vehicle, puts it on, and pretends to be one of the flock. At one point, he uses his father's trophy to shove a sheep out of his way, exposing his disguise. But because the infection has already begun spreading through his body, the sheep and hybrid creatures mistake him for one of their own and allow him to pass unharmed. Meanwhile, Senora Mac and Experience decide to help him. Armed with a shotgun, they drive straight into the zombie sheep, mowing through the infected animals. Elsewhere, Angus starts the airplane, preparing to escape with Oldfield. But the infection reaches its final stage. His teeth begin falling out, his face becomes horribly deformed, and his hands transform into sheep-like hooves as he screams in agony. Henry arrives at the airstrip and searches for his brother inside the hangar. Suddenly, Angus ambushes him, slamming him against a wall and revealing his monstrous new hybrid form. Henry desperately tries to remind him of who he used to be, telling him that if Angus hadn't done what he did when they were children, the two of them could have run the farm together. Angus refuses to listen and continues attacking him. With no other choice, Henry smashes his father's trophy against Angus's neck. But even that isn't enough to stop him. The mutation intensifies, making Angus even stronger. Henry reaches for the shotgun, but the monster knocks it away with a powerful strike and throws him across the room. At that moment, Angus's airplane begins circling the airstrip, giving Henry an idea. Tucker's little dog suddenly appears and starts barking non-stop, distracting the hybrid monster. Henry encourages the dog to keep barking so Angus won't notice the airplane approaching from behind. The plan works perfectly. The airplane's spinning propeller tears into Angus, leaving him mortally wounded and unable to continue fighting. After the battle, Henry notices the first signs of the infection spreading across his own arm. Before he can react, Angus somehow gets back to his feet and prepares to attack once again. Fortunately, Tucker arrives in a jeep, slams into Angus, and pours the antidote directly into his mouth. He then does the same for Henry. Henry's body reacts violently for a few moments before the antidote restores him to normal and completely cures the infection. Tucker explains that he managed to retrieve the antidote from the laboratory and that they can now return all the infected victims to normal. Angus's transformation is reversed as well, but his injuries from the battle are fatal, so they leave him where he falls. When they reunite with Experience, they explain everything that happened. Together, they decide to gather every infected zombie sheep inside the barn and use the antidote to cure them. Unfortunately, there isn't enough serum for the entire flock. Suddenly, Angus appears once again. Although he's human again, he's still badly wounded. Determined to continue his project, he tries to control the zombie sheep. But now that he's no longer infected, the creatures no longer recognize him as one of their own, and they immediately turn on him and devour him alive. Realizing his brother is gone forever, Henry lights a torch and throws it into the middle of the zombie sheep herd, setting the entire flock ablaze. The following morning, Henry and the others begin gathering every infected hybrid creature and treating them with the antidote. Grant is among them, finally restored to normal, though overwhelmed with guilt over the animals he killed and ate while he was transformed. In the end, Henry decides to keep his father's farm and build a new life there alongside Experience and Tucker. Tucker's little dog continues watching over the farm, but in the final scene, instead of barking, it lets out a sheep's bleat, revealing that it, too, has been infected. And that's how the movie ends. Thank you for watching. Don't forget, your opinion matters to us, so be sure to leave your thoughts in the comments and subscribe to the channel.